Hello, and welcome to the Kronos Upgrade 7.0 presentation for employees. The upgrade itself is actually part of a process improvement that we have for payroll and getting our time cards in and getting everyone paid correctly. We've got several items that have already begun. We've got the employee view that was rolled out, and you now have access to view your time card and your accruals directly in Kronos. And we have a couple of items that just have a generic timeline that are March 2015. That's because we do not have an actual date on those yet. They're still being identified and finalized by leadership. And as soon as we have additional information, we will be sending that out to everyone. So we do have the Kronos upgrade to this system itself, and part of that includes the new phone system called Teletime that will replace our current system. The goal of all these process improvement items is to increase the accountability of the employee, make sure we've got increased accuracy on the time cards, streamline the process, and create some efficiencies. We currently have 12 different leave request systems at UTMB. So one of the big improvements that we're going to see is that this is all going to be in one system. Everyone will submit their leave requests and approve leave requests in Kronos. This is a streamlined process. It's going to save us some time and increase the accuracy, and it's going to increase the accuracy for the employees as well. So what is new for us is this new phone clocking system. So we'll see some new codes. We're going to see a separate timekeeper versus employee login because we're going to see different views of Kronos. And as employees, we're going to have greater accessibility to review that time card, look at those accruals, verify how much we're actually going to be paid, and we'll have some screenshots of all of this. And we're going to make all of those time adjustment requests as well as our leave requests in that system. And then eventually we'll also be approving our time card in there, signaling to the manager that our card is ready for them to review and approve. Just reminders, of course, the old My Time detail does go away. Some of you have probably already identified that and discovered that, forcing us to go into Kronos itself and look at the most accurate information. So the objectives that we have today is we are going to talk about and look at the different codes for the Teletime system. And we're also going to have some screenshots and information on something called GTOR, or Global Time Off Request. The go-live date for this new system, the upgraded system, is March 18th. And of course, we need to talk about who to call if you do have a question, and we'll have a brief demonstration of the new system at the end. If you do have questions, if you've watched this presentation and you still have a question about something that you've seen in here, please don't hesitate to send an email to the emails that are shown on the very last slide of this presentation. So one of the primary changes that we're going to see is that once we roll out the new system, we will have two separate logins. That's because the view is going to differ whether you are the employee or whether you are a timekeeper manager. Timekeeper managers are going to have a different view. It's called the navigator view, and employees are going to continue to have what's known as the classic view. That's what we have now, and so your view will not change hardly at all. You'll also notice on the bottom of the Kronos login page, there's a new link, Historical Edits Employee Request. The new global time off system does not allow for us to submit a leave request or a missed punch request on a time period that is in the past, that has already been signed off. That means if you do have something that you need to edit, something that needs to be fixed on a time period that was in the past, we're going to be filling out this historical edit request. You'll fill that out, route that to your timekeeper manager, and then they'll finish that process and get that edited into the time card. If you happen to log into the wrong one, again, two different logins, one for employees, one for manager timekeepers. If you accidentally click on the manager timekeeper link, you will get this message. Now, typically when we see system administrator, that means call the help desk. However, in this case, what we want you to do is pause and think for a minute. Did you accidentally click the wrong login link? Might want to simply log out of this one, double check, make sure that you're logging into the employee login, and then you should be just fine. We do have options if you're dialing in from home or calling in from home that you would want to use not calling in from home, but if you are accessing on your computer from home, using the My Citrix or My VPN. Those are options that you could use. You can also use the My Citrix if you are at a computer that does not have the correct version of Java. If you're receiving Java errors, that might be something that you would need to do as well. And the help desk can help you with that. So the new phone system called Teletime does replace our existing phone system. We are still going to call into the very same number, so you're still going to call into 23333 or 33333, but the codes that you would use are going to change slightly. In the morning when you arrive or at the beginning of your shift, you're still going to use that 1. That is your first punch of the day. That remains the same. However, you'll notice that we no longer have the clock code 9. And the 3 and the 4 have changed. So if you are someone who clocks in and out at the beginning and end of your shift, you will now simply do a 1 and a 1. If you are an employee that clocks in and out for lunch and you have typically used the 1, 3, 4, and 9 at the end of your shift, you will now do a 1, 5. 5 is the new 3. 1, 5, 1, 1. Okay? If you have a default meal and you let that ride and that's what you use, and again, you're only using a 1 and a 9 in the current world, again, you would use 1, 1. If you're canceling your meal and you currently use 1, 3, 4, 9, in the new world, you will do 1, 5, 1, 1 sequentially. If you happen to accidentally hit that 3, please note that it is announcing what that menu option is. It does give you the reminder, so you do want to make sure and listen to those prompts on the phone system. But if you accidentally do a 3, then you're going to need to immediately turn around and do the correct punch, the 1, and probably submit a time adjustment request on that, because your timekeeper needs to be authorized by you to remove that incorrect 3 or callback punch that you've just entered on that time card. So again, paying attention to the prompts in this new phone system is going to be very important until we get used to those. If you are someone who typically uses the phone system to float to another department, then that is the number 2. That's your new float transfer or float number. If you are an individual who is on callback and you customarily have called back in to document that time, you now will have a clock code 3 that you would be using. We did include the number 4 because we just wanted you to realize that it is not being utilized. It wasn't a mistake on any of our lists. We're simply not utilizing that. And again, the 5 acts just like the current 3 does. These phone punches are sequential. If you forget to clock in the morning, that next punch is going to slide down in your time card and shows as the first punch. We have some screenshots of that, and that is something you really want to be aware of. So here's an example for our exempt employees, and you'll notice that this phone icon in the top right has an X on it. You may have noticed on the previous slide that there was no equivalent to the clock code 7. There is no equivalent in the new phone system. So if you are an exempt employee that currently does clock code 7 for hours worked, you will now have one of 2 options. Your department will probably make a recommendation to you as to which option they prefer. There is something called pay to schedule. That's the second screenshot that you see here with the 8 to 5, 8 to 5. That is something that is actually loaded by the timekeeper. In this case, the employees no longer have to clock in by the phone, and it is taken care of by the timekeeper. All you would need to do is when you have leave is you submit your leave request, and they're taken care of rather seamlessly. The other option that we have for exempt is you could be using something called your PC license to edit. Everyone right now has a PC license to view, but in the case that your department chose that lets you edit your own time card, that is a PC license with edit capability. You would then go into your time card and you would enter on that pay code column hours worked, and then the 8.5, 9, whatever you customarily see in your time card now. Again, those two options are the only options that we have for exempts that are used to seeing hours worked. If you are an exempt employee who does accrue comp time or overtime, you've been approved for the overtime or comp time depending on your situation, you can use the phone. And you would again use the 1 and the 1. If you're canceling your meal, 1511. Okay? But if you are an hours worked person, do not use the phone. It is not capable of populating hours worked onto your time card via the phone. If I am an hourly person, I mentioned this sequential punching. It's important to realize the difference in how the time card will look. This is the very same time card, the very same punches, but in the current world, because we can distinguish between an in and an out punch, you'll notice on December the 2nd, in the first example, it shows clearly that the missed punch is the in punch. But in the new world, when we finish the upgrade, the sequential punching, if you fail to clock in, that next punch slides down. If you are someone clocking in and out for lunch, again, they just keep sliding down. So that's going to create a much different look on your time card. That means this is going to take a little thought to really notice when I see a red box, which punch is the true missed punch. Now, we do have some tips that can work and some features that can work to help with that, and it is called the Basic Scheduler. If your department chooses to use this, they can put their employees on a schedule. It does not change anything about how you work or your schedule or anything like that. It is simply something that's lying behind the scenes. So if your department were to put you on a schedule, when you have a punch that was missed, such as on December the 2nd, that 1119 punch would have a red outline box on it because Kronos would be able to look at the schedule and identify that 1119 is not a typical time that you would have clocked in, that it was not consistent, thereby identifying that as an exception and making it much easier for both you and the timekeepers to zoom in on what the actual missed punch was. When you log into Kronos in the new world, again, we're using the employee login. You can, of course, look at the time card. You're doing that now, hopefully. You can look at the time card and then see your accruals. So if I look at my time card, one of the other things that we want to be very aware of is the Totals and Schedules tab. You have this ability now, and we do encourage you to look at that now, get familiar with it, because this is where you can look and see how many hours are you being paid in this time period. If you are accruing overtime or comp time or you get shift diff, those things are going to be easily identifiable in the Totals and Schedules tab. In the new world, this becomes even more critical because we will see some situations where there is a placeholder that populates onto your time card. And that placeholder can give the illusion of having more hours than what you're actually going to be paid for. So looking in our totals and schedules, looking at all paid hours is going to be very, very important in the future world. Also on the Accruals tab, it's a good idea to get familiar with this feature. This is where we can actually see projected takings or debits and projected credits. Kronos knows when you ask to see and you click on November the 1st, it knows that there are some things that are going to pop in on the 1st. You're going to be getting sick leave and vacation that are going to go forward. Those are considered projected accruals. In the future world, you will be able to request in Kronos time off up to a year in advance. That would be a projected taking or a projected debit. We need to be aware of those concepts, and we need to know that Kronos is keeping track of those on the Accrual tab. Typically, we're most concerned with that first column, the balance on selected date. But do look at those other columns and notice how they work. If I do a request of any sort, it's going to be under the My Requests. And again, this menu is just like the one you're seeing currently. The only difference is we've added the My Request link to that page. So when I'm ready to make a request, it brings me to the calendar and I click on the date. If the date doesn't appear to be accessible, you may need to use those arrows to scroll back a little ways or forward a little ways. You can also use at the top of that page, you'll see it says range of dates. You can use the calendar icons. You can also change the view and say you'd like to see the month view versus the weekly view. All those options to help you find the right date that you're looking for. If you do utilize the features at the top, the range of dates, the monthly, and the calendar, you do need to click the Apply button. Most of the time, if you're just trying to go back a few days or forward a few days, the arrows are probably going to be the most efficient way to navigate around. Notice at the bottom of the page, we've got 3 options there. If you are an employee that uses the scheduling feature, if you're in health systems and you are on the advanced scheduler, you'll also see a 4th option in there regarding your scheduling options. The primary 3 are my current requests, so I could look at any of the requests that I have in the time period that's being shown. I can request a missed punch to be made, edited on that time card, or I can make a request for time off. You'll notice on the time card that it says 12A to 12A and a question mark. That is simply a default of the system. It doesn't mean anything in particular. It's just a default laying there. If you are on a schedule, that will show on the time card. And in this case, we can see that the person is on a schedule and it shows and is identified in the red outline. When you're looking at the calendar and you want to request some dates, the holidays are not illustrated there. Those are UTMB holidays, and because we do have various holidays, whether you're in CMC or you're in clinics or you're in an office, so those did not populate because we do have those different holiday schedules. So I'm going to select the date. Again, you can do a multi-date request, but it is consecutive days. You cannot pick a Friday and a Monday. Those would be 2 separate requests. So I'm going to pick the dates, select the request type, and then proceed with my request. If you realize that you just made a mess of that and you need to start over, that would be the refresh button at the top of the page. You can select a date again and it would deselect if it was just a mistake that you picked the wrong day. So once I've selected the day and I've selected the type of request, it brings a little form up. The default is vacation, so if it's not vacation that you're requesting, please do make sure and use that drop down and select the correct item. If that sick leave is supposed to be unscheduled, you know that's the policy, please do make sure that you submit that correctly the first time. You've got a start time. That would typically be the start of the time that you're not going to be there. If you're an 8 to 5 employee, the beginning of that full day would be 8 a.m. If it's a sick leave request and you've left halfway through the day, it's the time that that sick leave begins on that day. The length is the amount of hours that you are requesting. When you begin making that request, as soon as you say that that is a time off request, it will bring up your accrual balances to the right. If you are a probationary employee, you have not completed your 6 months yet, you will see the hours that are beginning to accrue in parentheses with a letter P, indicating that they are accruing but they are not available. If you try to request something that you do not have sufficient accrual balance for, it will not submit. This is a nice thing for managers. They no longer have to wonder if you have enough accruals. If you do not have enough, it will not submit. It will be stuck in draft status and it will give you an error message. When you are submitting this, and if it is a half day and you're requesting the begin time is in the afternoon, or if you are someone who works a second shift or third shift, please make sure and do enter the hours in there either as military time or with the P in there to identify that it is afternoon. As soon as you click the submit button, an email notification goes to your reports to manager, and hopefully they will go in and address that request as soon as possible. All the timekeepers with access to your department do have access to that request, although we realize that The manager is the one that typically is the only one with authority to actually approve your leave request. Again, we mentioned that if you try to submit something for which you do not have sufficient accruals, you will get this error message, and it simply says the edit cannot be made. You do not have that much available. And we also have a screenshot here illustrating the probationary employee. They have 16 hours. It's beginning to accrue, but it is not available. It's in percent or in parentheses. I mentioned the future takings, the future accrual credits and debits. This is the reason that we need to be aware of that. Because I can submit a leave request up to a year in advance, if I do so and I look out to November and I say I really want to take every bit of vacation that I have in November, and I've identified how much that is, and I'm going to ask for it, I'm going to submit my request. When your manager receives that, if they click approve, it is going to encumber that vacation that you've requested. When they encumber that and it goes out to that schedule that lies behind the scenes in Kronos, it does not show on your time card until that becomes current, but it is encumbered. You forget about it, move on, got that great vacation planned, and then something happens and you say, I need to have Friday off. Unfortunately, when you try to put that request in, Kronos is going to say you do not have any vacation available because it knows you've encumbered all of it, you've already spoken for it, and it's on hold out there for November. It will give you an error. It will tell you that it cannot give you that because you've encumbered it in November. So if you get an error message, please take time to read that error message. That will help you decipher what's going on and what the problem is. But this is something that we need to be aware of because that could be problematic in some areas. It's easy to forget that that's already been approved. Some areas don't like to work that far out in the future. Perhaps your department policy right now is, I don't approve vacation a year in advance. Your department can utilize some of the other features within Kronos, and these are things that departments will probably be identifying to you as how they really want to manage those distant vacation requests. One of the things that you could have is something called TOR, a time off request. That's simply a different pay code within GTOR. When I'm in GTOR and I'm in there and I'm picking vacation, sick leave unscheduled, down at the bottom of the list is this TOR. What the TOR enables us to do is to make that request for far into the future, but it does not encumber my vacation. It's a placeholder. That placeholder then goes to that schedule line behind the scenes so that departments can better manage who all has requested time off. They can approve the TOR without encumbering my vacation and causing confusion. And then when that leave becomes a little bit closer, the key is, as an employee, I've got to remember to submit the right leave request. If TOR comes forward onto your time card, TOR doesn't mean anything to payroll. TOR doesn't mean anything to PeopleSoft HCM when it tries to create a check. And so when it looks at that, you're not going to be paid for TOR. It's a meaningless code. It was just a placeholder. So if your department chooses to use TOR, it's great on the one hand, but we do need to be aware that a real leave request for vacation or sick leave or whatever you're using needs to be submitted. What if I submit a leave request and then I decide I don't want to take that day off? Plans have changed and we're going to have to postpone that trip and I want to retract that request. I can simply retract it. I can cancel it. Different tools you have depending on the stage at which that request was, whether the manager had already approved it or not, and so on. So I can simply go in and I can say, please retract that request, and it disappears off from the time card and the manager's list. The nice thing about GTOR is that I can look at that calendar and I know where my request is in the process. I know when I have retracted it, when I've submitted it, and when it's been approved. the status changes. In this calendar, GTOR means any leave request. GTOR is the entire global time off request process, but GTOR on the calendar is referring to leave requests as opposed to an MP that you might see on your calendar, which indicates a missed punch request. When my request for vacation is approved, as soon as it's approved, it actually goes to the time card. And this is why it's important to put the time that my leave begins. You can see in the first example, it was for vacation for the full day. My day normally begins at 8 a.m., so it populates and says beginning at 8 a.m., 8 hours of vacation. The second example, became ill, went home after lunch, and because I identified that that leave began at 1 p.m., it flows to the time card in a good order. I worked in the morning, sick leave unscheduled for 4 hours beginning at 1 p.m. So you can see we're putting in the start time as well as the number of hours on the request is important. That's going to flow right straight to the time card when the manager approves it. Some tips. If you have a PC edit license, and this is very, very important for our folks that have a PC edit license, these are the folks that are putting hours worked directly on their time card. If you have that ability, some people have gotten in the habit, we have a lot of people that already have PC edit licenses, and if this pertains to you and you normally put your vacation and your sick leave on your time card directly, and then the manager approves it, it is critical in the new system that you do not do that. If you put that leave directly onto your time card and then your manager approves that request, there will be a double entry on your time card. That could cause real problems if you're running low on that particular type of time, and it could cause some of those edits to fail. So it is critical, if you have a PC edit license, do not put leave directly on your time card. If I am submitting a request for a Friday and a Monday, those are separate requests. If you are using half day of sick and a half day of vacation, those are two separate requests. You can only pick one type of leave per request. And do always double check your accrual balance before you make that request. Otherwise, it will be stuck in that draft status. It does not route to your manager. So recognizing those missed punches, that's going to be part of our challenge in the new world. We're used to seeing the red box directly on the punch that was missed. We're going to have to get used to this, being able to troubleshoot our own time cards. Again, ideally, we're not missing any punches, so this won't be an issue for you. But if you do have a missed punch, we do have to be aware of that. You can see in this particular example how having the person on a schedule helps to flag with that red outline box. In this example, that Friday, the person forgot to clock in. That first punch when they clocked out for lunch slid down into the first spot. Everything else slid down. And the red box is now in the out punch, giving us an illusion that the out punch is missing. So again, we've got to look at these, study it, understand it. And again, if you are on a schedule in Kronos, it will simply help in being able to identify which one is truly the missed item. Once I realize that I have a missed punch, I'm going to go in and do a missed punch request. So again, the same process. I'm going to go into My Requests, pick the day. You can see in this example that we have a couple of missed punch items that we've already submitted. I'm going to select that, select Missed Punch Request, and we're going to fill out that form. When you are filling out the form, these fields are required for the start and the duration or the length. And this is something that may not really make sense right off the bat, but when we look at the time card, hopefully it makes sense. The shift or the start time is the time that you forgot to clock. So if in this case the employee forgot to clock in at 8 a.m., that's the start time. If you forgot to clock out, it's that out punch. Whatever the clock is that you forgot is what goes in the start. The length, this is very important. You need to put 0. You need to put 0. Only on the missed punch. You're submitting a leave request. Obviously, a leave request, you have to tell me how many hours of leave you are requesting. But the missed punch, the length needs to be 0. We'll see why. In the notes section, please do explain what's going on, especially in a case like maybe you didn't punch at all, you were at an off-site conference, couldn't clock. You're going to put the start time for the beginning of your shift. But in the notes section, I could say, I attended an off-site conference. I didn't clock in at this time. I also didn't clock out at this time. If you forgot to cancel a meal, that's what I'm putting in there. I forgot to cancel my meal at this time. So all of that information is very, very helpful in the notes section to help your timekeeper and manager, and this is a new process for them as well, to help them understand what you're trying to get done. When your manager approves the missed punch request, notice that missed punch flows to the time card with the hours that you put in. If you had put in 8 hours or 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever you thought was appropriate, that is going to be a placeholder, and it is going to create the illusion of hours on the time card, and that is going to make that very confusing for both you and the timekeepers. This is why we really want the missed punch to be 0 hours. And you can see that the time that I put on that, the start time, is what then pops to the time card. Okay, it's going to go to that time card regardless of whether it was an in punch or an out punch. It's a placeholder. It's flagging to the time card. Now the timekeeper has to go in and fix the actual entry. When this is complete, then you will see the missed punch on the time card as the placeholder, and the row is now been edited by the timekeeper with that missed punch in its correct place. So it's a little bit more of a process. There's a little bit more steps to that. That missed punch request remains on the time card forever. It is a placeholder. And so this is what our goal is, to make it look like this item as you see here, missed punch 0, the missed time recorded in that first column, and then the timekeeper making the edits appropriately. Okay, FMLA, pool leave, and military leave. There's no changes to how we open a case. You can actually select FML from the drop-down in the GTOR in that global time off request. Again, we've got vacation, sick leave, SLU for unscheduled, holiday if you had a banked holiday and you're using it, and FML is one of those codes as well. Your timekeeper or manager still has to go into the leave editor and actually make that edit. So you're making the request. It's going to populate a placeholder of FML and the number of hours on the time card, and then it's going to have a subsequent entry after that. Emergency cases can still be opened by a manager if there was an emergency. We do want to avoid historical edits if at all possible. So if I'm the person making the request to use my FML, then I would select that from the drop-down. You can see our example here. Same process as before. The shift begins at, I'm using it for all day. If you have multiple cases, and I know a lot of people do, we would want to be sure and identify in the notes section for the timekeeper which case is being used. In this case, they've identified it was the care of the child case. Perhaps you have 2 cases on yourself. Perhaps it's just the date that's different that you need to identify. It's important for our timekeepers and managers to enter on the correct case. Even though it's all coming out of your FMLA bucket, it is important that it be recorded correctly. FML is a placeholder, and so we'll see how that populates to the time card. And it's very important that we're getting this in here correctly. So on my request, FML, the number of hours, and we're going to put in the start time. If you were just taking a couple of hours off, the start time is whatever time you left. And this is why this is so important to understand placeholders. FML will populate to the time card as soon as the manager clicks approve. It's going to pop in there for the number of hours you've requested. Then the timekeeper manager goes into the leave editor, and it is able then to populate the LV sick or LV holiday, LV vacation, whatever that code is. And notice now both of them have 8 hours, totaling 16 for the day. But when you look in the totals and schedules, you'll know that that one is just a placeholder. This is why this is so important, that you've got to look in the totals and schedules, understand what you're really being paid for, and that that is just a placeholder. Coming soon, the smartphone app. We're very excited about this. We've been testing it. We might be able to get this rolled out on the 18th as well. But right now we want to make sure that we've got everything working on the Kronos that we use on our computers before we venture into the app. We're not sure who all gets the app. All of those decisions are yet to be determined, but there is an app. We're very excited about how it works. We would be able to do everything on the app that you could do on the computer, request leave, approve leave, and so on. But again, there are some concerns. We just want to make sure that we've got all of our ducks in a row and that this is rolled out appropriately. It might come out to everyone. It might be only to individuals based upon certain criteria. We just don't know the answers to that yet. More information will be coming out soon. The new version of Kronos does have a new version of Java, and we, again, have been working very closely with the folks in IS that handle this kind of thing. We've been in communication with them. We believe we have a really good plan for this. We're pretty sure that we're going to be able to pull the old version of Java, load the new version of Java to about 80 to 90% of the computers at UTMB seamlessly with no interaction by the users required. First time that you log in, it would handle that automatically. However, if you are one of the people that you end up with a Java error, you get one of these messages, you're going to want to call the help desk and they will know exactly what to do to help you. If you are on an older computer and that computer when you log up says that that is Windows XP, you have a different problem. The new version of Java does not like XP at all, and you are probably going to be very frustrated. There is no particular fix that's going to remedy the errors that you are going to be seeing, and some of those errors won't even pop consistently so that you can acknowledge them and move on. If you have a computer with Windows XP, your best bet is probably to utilize My Citrix, and if you need any help with that, then you can contact the help desk and they'd be happy to walk you through that process. But again, Windows XP, most of those computers should have already been replaced with a newer model, and so you do want to simply be aware of that. If you do have a Java issue, please do call the help desk. If you're having a navigation issue, you're not sure where to click, what to do, how do I submit that leave form, you'll probably want to go out to the My Training page. This presentation and the quick guides, the simulations, all of the resources are published on the My Training page for you, and you can print those documents out and use those as a reference. If after watching this or during this presentation you have any questions, please do not hesitate. Email us at that address, the adminsystems.training, and we will be happy to answer the question or refer that to the appropriate individual. We do have ongoing training that is available. Again, as I mentioned, we've got our simulations and some job aids. We have some routine monthly training that does happen for new timekeepers, and we also have some refresher classes that we're going to be doing for timekeepers, and those are resuming March the 9th. So if you're one of the individuals that's been identified by your department to become a timekeeper, then you would want to go through that full class. It's a little bit longer. Our timeline, one of the things you do want to be aware of if you are using one of the 12 different systems we currently have for requesting leave, and you've already put a request in for something in April, May, June, July, or forward, you will want to put that request into the new system. Anything for leave that is March 16th and beyond needs to go in that new system. So you might want to be proactive, talk to your department, pull out a copy of that request, get a copy of that leave request so that you know what ones need to be resubmitted into Kronos. We are allowing 24 hours for that system upgrade. We really don't believe it's going to take that long. We're pretty sure we're going to be able to complete that in 8 hours, but we are giving ourselves enough time that if there is any problem that we're not turning that system over to you and it hasn't been fully tested and ready to go. We'll have more information as we get closer. We'll really know exactly what that timeline looks like. Tips for employees: always remember to use that employee login. Look at your time card. Again, we're moving in a direction with all of these things. We're moving in that direction that says that employees are going to be responsible for their own time card, that responsibility is not the timekeepers and the managers to remind us 17 times, we've got a mispunch, don't you want to fix that? We have access to our time card. We have access to do our little leave reforms, see our own accruals. If we want to be paid accurately, that time card is our responsibility. Look in the totals and schedules tab, make sure everything looks right and that you're being paid for the correct amount of hours, the correct time. Again, TOR, that time off request, is simply an option. Departments are going to have to look at that. We think that that's a good vehicle. It will eliminate some of that confusion about encumbered takings that are too far into the future. But that is something that departments will have to decide and communicate to you if that's something that they're going to utilize. It will be in your drop-down, and so it's just something to know whether your department embraced that particular option or not. So at this time, we'll go ahead and we'll do our demo, and that will show us a little bit about how the system really works. And again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email us at the adminsystems.training address. Okay, so now we'll proceed to our demo. I've logged in as an employee, as our demo employee. And as you can see, the menu looks much like you currently have. If you are a scheduling employee, you will have this scheduling option. If you're not a scheduling employee, you will not. So the only thing we've actually changed about the menu is we've added My Requests down here at the bottom. Okay, so again, time card, we do want to be aware on the time card. Whenever you're looking at the time card, you want to look at your accruals, and you want to be aware of those projected takings, the projected credits and debits that you have available. And you also, when you're looking at your time card, want to be aware of that totals and schedules tab down at the bottom. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got a time card that's got some activity on it. We have our totals and schedules tab and the accruals tab. And notice, in the totals and schedules, we have this all hours paid. That's the key. That's the one that you're looking at. Whether there's a placeholder or not, we want to make sure that we have all hours paid matching our expectation. As you can see on this time card, we have an employee who is 6:45 a.m. to 7:15 p.m. is their standard schedule. And in this case, on Sunday, they clocked in and they evidently left early. They didn't clock out at all, but they did leave early. They were sick and they just left. So they did submit their leave form, but we do have to have some indicator here as to clocking out. Otherwise, the only thing this employee is going to be paid for this day is the 2 hours of sick leave. When the employee submitted the sick leave request, it was 2 hours. And the start time of the sick leave is 5:15, so that does give us a clue. They probably should have clocked out somewhere very close to 5:15. Again, this is listed as SL. If this was something that was unexpected and abrupt, certainly we would need to have that as SLU. We're going to assume in this case that it was something that the manager already knew about, person had been ill, whatever the case might be, they'd had a doctor's appointment, whatever the situation. If this follows in the policy for your area as unscheduled, please do submit it correctly. Otherwise, it's going to be rejected, and you're going to have to resubmit it as the SLU. Okay, we've got another 2 hours of sick leave here. Again, we can see it entered correctly, where they've clocked out at 5:15 p. and the sick leave beginning at 5:15. We've got a missed punch request here. They forgot to clock in. And this is something that would be an ideal situation for how quickly it's being entered by the manager. When the employee submits the request for missed punch, 8 o'clock they realize they forgot to clock in, so they send in a request that says, I got there late and I just got going and I forgot to clock in at all. So they submit a request for missed punch, 0 hours. Remember, they're submitting it with a length of time, a duration of 0. The missed punch was the time that they did arrive. And now the manager, having received the request, goes quickly into Kronos, approves the request, making it pop to the card with the placeholder, turns right around, goes to the time card, and fixes that punch. Now when the employee clocks out at the end of the day, that punch will fall into the correct spot. If the manager does not get a chance to put that clock in immediately, or the employee does not notify them quickly enough, then that second punch is going to slide down into the first spot and everything keeps sliding down. So quickly addressing any issue is key for both the employee and the timekeeper in this case. Okay, so what we'd like to do is we'd like to go in and we want to fix this missed punch that we have on the 15th and create the out punch. We also would like to look at taking a day off into the future. You can notice down here on my schedule, you can see that that's where it's popping out so that it understands that 5:15 was not a typical departure time for me. And it's recording that transaction down here in the schedule as well. Okay. So let's go over to the request, and to do so I'm going to click the home button and that takes back to the menu. And now I'm going to submit my request for the 15th. Notice the 15th is not readily available, so I'm simply going to use my arrows to get back to the 15th. As we're looking at the time card, notice all of the entries that are showing up here. We've got the 12A to 12A and the question mark on every single day. Again, that's a default to the system. And you can see also that we've got my actual scheduled days that are populating there, 6:45A to 7:15P. And then you can also see these requests in the various status. So we've got a GTOR, which means it's leave. It's been approved. I've got an MP indicating that that was a missed punch. One's submitted, one's approved. So all of this activity is showing up on this calendar view. That means that if I submit something, I can know simply by looking back at my calendar, has it been approved yet? Was it rejected? Is there something that's going on? Okay. So for the 15th, I'm going to click on the 15th, and then I'm going to come down here and identify the type of request. It is a missed punch request. It brings me the form, and it says on the 15th, it's defaulting to a missed punch. It says it's hours. That's the only option you have. The start time and the length are required fields. Again, the start time is simply the punch that I have missed. What do I want added to that time card? I want 5:15P. Remember, it is essential that you either use military time or put the A's and P's in there to help distinguish. The length of time, this is a missed punch request. I need to put 0. If I put 8, I'm going to make that time card very confusing. It's going to record 8 as the placeholder and create for the illusion that there's 8 hours already there. So missed punch, 0 is my length. Because this is a new process to the timekeeper and me, I'm going to put a comment down here in the notes that says, I forgot to clock out at 5:15 p.m. and submit. Okay, so now on 5:15 we've got 2 items. We've got the GTOR, the leave request for the sick leave that was already approved, and now I've got a missed punch request. Okay. I can look down here in my requests, and again, the my requests are going to be reflective of whatever we've got highlighted and is targeted up here in the calendar area. So if you're ever wondering where your request is, always double check that you've got the right dates showing and use your arrows, or come up here and show a broader range of time and click the apply button. Okay, so I would like to submit a date for some vacation. I think I would like to take the 27th off. I'm going to click that day. It is a time off request. The default is vacation, so if it is something else, you do have to make sure and change that out. You'll have a full list of all the types of leave that an employee should be requesting. Again, holiday, VA, VAU, SL, SLU, and if you ever want a list of the different pay codes, that is available out on the Payroll Services website. There's a link on the Kronos' page. The start time for my vacation, my shift begins at 6:45, so I'm going to put in 6:45A. The length, I'm a 12-hour shift person, I'm going to put 12 hours. But wait, let me look and see if I even have that available. No, I don't. If I try to force that request, I'm going to submit it anyway. I'm going to see if Kronos knows, even though I can see that is not available. I'm going to put a note in here. Must be gone on this day. Hope you can approve. Here's the problem. When I click submit, it doesn't go anywhere. You will see a red message up here. I do apologize. This current environment does not show that, but in the real world it certainly does. And my request did not go anywhere. Notice on the calendar it says draft. It's still stuck in my request. It did not go anywhere. Kronos will not process that request through. It did not submit. Your manager never saw it. They can't see it. It's stuck on your side. Once you realize your mistake, your only choice when I click the box is to either delete it or submit it again. Well, submitting it again isn't going to make any difference. The difference is you cannot edit the request. So my only choice in this case is I'm going to simply delete the request. Oops, pick our button. Delete the request, apply, and now that request is completely gone. There's no trace of that except in a Kronos audit trail. It will have it there, but it is gone. If I absolutely must take the day off, you will have a code in that drop-down for what we call LWOP, or Leave Without Pay, LWP. So if it is critical, you could submit the request for LWP if you do not have the appropriate accruals available. Okay. All right, so again, the home menu, always making sure that you're looking at your time card and knowing that once the manager clicks approve, those items flow directly to your time card. It's not going to flow to the time card until it is approved. So even though we submitted that missed punch, the manager has to approve it. The manager does get an auto email, but again, if your manager is out, hopefully your department has a backup plan in process there, because any timekeeper in your department does have access to it, as do other managers that might be capable of covering for that situation. Okay. Always look at your totals and schedules. This 3 dots right here can be drawn up, and you can look at more details in that totals and schedules or in your accruals location. Okay. Here's our projected debits and credits, and you can see in this case here projected balance. This is where it's also tracking those hours that are accruing even though I'm still on probation. Okay. So that concludes our presentation. Again, I hope that this has been helpful to you, and if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to email us at the admin systems email that is listed in the last page of your PowerPoint. Thank you very much.
UTMB Health, working together to work wonders.